Hello everyone, and thank you for finding time and attending today's webinar. My name is Queen Chen and I'm Counselor, Head of Trade Office of Vietnam Embassy in Singapore. Now I would like to check if you can see and hear us well.
Yes.
Great. Distinguished Your Excellency Tao Thị Thanh Hương, Ambassador of Vietnam to the Republic of Singapore, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of organizer, I'm pleased to welcome you to the webinar on the new perspective for businesses after the EV-FTA enter into force, co-organized by the Vietnam Embassy in Singapore, the EU-ASEAN Business Council, and the Singapore International Chamber of Commerce, together with Vietnam partners from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Industry and Trade, and Eurocharm Vietnam. Today, we have more than 100 participants connected virtually from Singapore, Vietnam, and other countries. Our speakers will discuss new bright prospects for cooperation between the EU and Vietnam after the EV-FTA and what is needed for its successful implementation. Before we start, on behalf of organizers, we would like to express our thanks to our panelists. Mr. Chris Humphrey, Executive Director of the EU-ASEAN Business Council, Mr. Nicolas Audier, Chairman of Eurocharm Vietnam, Mr. Trần Anh Vũ, Deputy Director General of Multilateral Economic Cooperation under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ms. Nguyễn Thị Minh Huyền, Deputy Director General of Vietnam E-Commerce and Digital Economy Agency under the Ministry of Industry and Trade. After webinar presentations, we will have a Q&A session at the end to answer your questions. Before we start, let me explain how we can talk to us during the webinar. If you have questions for our speakers, please feel free to send it through the chat icon at the bottom of the Zoom interface. We will be answering questions at the end of the session. If we don't get to your question during today's webinar, we will be sure to follow up afterward via the email. I wish you all a very successful webinar. Thank you. Now we can begin. I would like to welcome our guest of honor, Ambassador Tao Thị Thanh Hương. She will deliver the opening speech. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ambassador Tao Thị Thanh Hương. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Sorry, Ambassador, you're muted.
Sorry. Good morning, Mr. Chris Humphrey, Executive Director, EU-ASEAN Business Council, Mr. Nicolas Audier, Chairman of Eurocharm Vietnam, honorable speakers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to the EU-ASEAN Business Council, Singapore International Chamber of Commerce, Eurocharm Vietnam, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Industry and Trade of Vietnam, in partnering with our embassy to make this event happen. Our warmest welcome to all of you for taking time to attend this webinar on the new perspective for businesses after EV-FTA enter into force. While COVID-19 has made many companies focus on their near-term challenges at home, it is essential to push economic cooperation, to help business to recover, to create more jobs, and to widen their regional and global markets. As we all knew, the EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement entered into force on the 1st of August 2020. With immediate effect, EV-FTA will ultimately scrap duties on 99% of all goods traded between two sides. Doing business in Vietnam will become easier for European companies. It will now be able to invest and pitch for government contracts with equal chances to local competitors. At the same time, EVFTA has strong labor and environmental requirements for sustainable development. Therefore, Vietnam needs to carry out the reforms and address key implementation issues to reap the full benefits of this trade agreement. Ladies and gentlemen, Vietnam is not only a market of nearly 100 million young population, but also an attractive destination for investors. Over the last decade, Vietnam has been achieving high economic growth at around 7% per year. Inflation is controlled at around 3.5%. This year, our Sustainable Development Index improved quickly and reached 49 position out of 166 countries. The reliability index of the banking system has shifted from stable to active. The poverty rate in Vietnam is now less than 6%. Medical coverage reached 87%, and literacy rate reached 99% of Vietnam population. We attracted more than 30 million foreign visitors yearly. Indeed, it is the growth manufacturing segments, the active performance of our private sector, and the strong inflow of FDI, which lies at the heart of all these successes. Ladies and gentlemen, EU and Vietnam have robust economic ties. EU is now our third largest trading partner. In 2019, Vietnam's bilateral trade with the EU mounted to 54.6 billion US dollars, or 10% of our trade in goods with the world. EU is currently our fifth largest investor with value of 24 billion US dollars in more than 2,200 projects. EVFTA offers companies a spectacular chance to strengthen business relations, market basis, as well as enhancing the resilience of our economies. Moreover, this agreement will also provide an ideal gateway for EU companies to link with the dynamic region of Southeast Asia, a market of 655 million population. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to make two important points. Number one, on trade. This agreement will provide great opportunities for promoting trade and recognition of EU brands in Vietnam's market, and vice versa. Vietnam is a big exporter of agricultural products such as coffee, rice, pepper, fresh fruits, vegetable, seafood, wooden products. Vietnam is at present the second largest coffee exporter in the world, and it accounts for 20% of world coffee output. But many of you may not know that. Why? Because our products don't have a brand names. We think that it is our mutual interest in mutual benefits that EU and Vietnamese businesses could coordinate to develop these humble products brand names so that they can go global with good reputation. Number two, on investment, we would encourage enterprises to invest in areas such as high-tech, advanced electronics, research and development, agriculture, machinery, supporting industry, processing and manufacturing to serve high-tech agriculture, renewable energy, healthcare, logistics, digitalization, e-commerce, etc. Our government will give priority to projects with high technology, high value-added production, or linking with supply chains. This direction of investment will better protect environment, focus on efficiency for sustainable development. I look forward to witnessing the flourishing EU-Vietnam cooperation, both in trade and investment in the time to come. With that, I hope we will have a fruitful section ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. I'm pleased to introduce now Mr. Chris Humphrey. Mr. Chris Humphrey is Executive Director of the EU-ASEAN Business Council. Since the COVID-19 outbreak, Chris has hosted dozens of webinars, and today he's going to share what he expects from this webinar and what the EU-ASEAN Business Council can do to support businesses. Chris, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Tran. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for that very comprehensive opening about the benefits that the FTA can bring as well. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning, and a particular thank you as well to Nicolas Audier from EuroCham Vietnam. Nicolas is the chairman there, and we're very grateful for their help and assistance today too. We are, of course, here today to discuss what I think is one of the most important trade deals that the EU has ever entered into. The European Commission itself describes it as the deepest and most comprehensive FTA that it's ever done with an emerging market. And I think it is a very exciting deal for the future of EU-Vietnam relations as well going forward. My personal view is that Vietnam is a bright star in ASEAN. It's one of the most exciting and dynamic countries in the region. And I think when it comes to trade and investment issues, it's also one of the most progressive in the region as well. And I think Vietnam's position will only get brighter and bigger and stronger going forward because of this FTA with Europe, and also because of its membership of the CPTPP as well. The EU, as the ambassador just mentioned, is already a very significant trade and investment partner of Vietnam, and that relationship is only set to blossom and grow much further as a result of this FTA. And I think this FTA, certainly from the viewpoint of the Business Council, we hope it will become a stepping stone for further trade deals with the rest of Southeast Asia and Europe. I'm very much looking forward to the discussions today, learning a lot more about the FTA and its implementation. We're going to have some great presentations from MFA and MOIT, and of course from Nicola as well at EuroCham, talking about the work that they're doing on helping with the implementation of the FTA. My thanks go to the trade section of the Vietnamese embassy here in Singapore for helping us organize this. Also to EuroCham Vietnam and to SICC, who've also partnered with us on this. I won't talk any longer because you're all here to listen to experts. I'm not an expert on the FTA, I won't pretend to be. I've got a good, strong overview of it. But here at the Business Council, we will be here to help with the implementation and working very closely with EuroCham Vietnam, and also on strengthening further the trade and investment ties between Europe and all of Southeast Asia. So with that, I wish you all a very, very good session today. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions from our audience, and I hand back to Dr. Tran. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome our third presenter, Mr. Trần Anh Vũ. Mr. Vũ is Deputy Director General of Multilateral Economic Cooperation Department under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. After studying international studies in Vietnam and public policy in Korea, Mr. Vũ has been serving the MFA for almost 20 years. In the discussion today, Mr. Vũ will deliver a presentation entitled EVFTA and New Bright Prospect for Businesses. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Trần Anh Vũ. Mr. Vũ, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Queen. Excellency Ambassador Tào Thị Thanh Hương, Mr. Chris Humphrey, Chairman of EU-ASEAN Business Council, distinguished participants, distinguished speakers. So it gives me great pleasure to be able to participate in this meaningful event to share with you some information about the implementation and the opportunities of the EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement. So in roughly about 15 to 20 minutes, I hope to be able to share with you some information on this important and meaningful FTA. So next slide, please. So first, allow me to briefly touch upon some progresses in Vietnam-EU relations. So the two sides established diplomatic relations in 1990, and this year marks the 30th anniversary of Vietnam-EU's diplomatic relations. In 1995, the two sides signed the Framework Cooperation Agreement, and 7 years later, the two sides signed a very important agreement called the Partnership and Cooperation Agreement, PCA. And then in October 2016, the PCA entered into force. On June 2019, the two sides signed the EVFTA, and together with the EVFTA is the signing of the EVPA, which is the Investment Protection Agreement. As Ambassador mentioned, the EVFTA took effect in the first day of August 2020. So in short, we can say that the bilateral relations have been strengthened in both political and economic areas. Next slide, please. So in the regard of economic relations, Ambassador also mentioned that the EU is a very important trade and investment partner of Vietnam. Currently, EU is Vietnam's fourth biggest trade partner and the second biggest export market of Vietnam. And for the EU, Vietnam is the second largest trade partner within ASEAN. In 2019, the bilateral trade reached almost 56 million US dollar, while EU's direct investment to Vietnam amounted to around 25 billion US dollar, which accounted for 7.6% of our total FDI. And the top investors are the Netherlands, Germany, France, and some other countries. Next, please. So the EVFTA at a glance, as I have mentioned, the agreement was signed last year on June 2019, and it was ratified by the EU on February, and lately by Vietnam on June 2020, and it has now entered into force. Next slide, please. I have two interesting quotes here. First, from our Prime Minister, and after signing up the FTA, Prime Minister Nguyễn Xuân Phúc of Vietnam, he stressed that the EVFTA can be seen as a broad and modern expressway, bringing the EU and Vietnam closer together. And from the EU side, Trade Commissioner Cecilia Malmström mentioned that the EVFTA is the most ambitious free trade deal ever concluded with a developing country. Next, please. The EVFTA at a glance, and we have this slide from Eurocharm Vietnam. You can see that there are three broad categories that we can explain about the EVFTA. The first is tariff reduction, and both sides committed to reduce tariff by roughly 99%, which is very high as compared with other free trade agreements. For Vietnam, we are committed to reduce tariff to EU's export by almost 0% after 10 years. And for the EU side, the EU is committed to lower tariff for Vietnamese export to almost 0% over a period of 7 years. In terms of policy innovations, the EVFTA is very advanced in terms of its specific commitment in such area as custom and trade facilitation, rules of origin, geographical indications, bilateral dispute settlement, investment protection, and other areas. And the third broad category is a specific industry impact, which I hope to be able to mention to you later. So I think that the EU investor will benefit a lot from our commitment to open our service and investment area, especially in such area as automotive, machinery, agribusiness, fishery, pharmaceuticals, and some others. Next, please. The benefits from the EVFTA. So here you can see that also from Eurocharm, they list some of the key benefits of the EVFTA. So I think that the EU investor and businesses will be able to enjoy improved business environment in Vietnam. Hopefully through the EVFTA and the IPA, the two sides will become strategic alliances in terms of FDI. And the EVFTA is also expected to bring about value-added quality, and especially the businesses and the SME will receive a lot of support and assistance through the commitment within the EVFTA. The EVFTA is also hoped to become a role model for cooperation between EU and other ASEAN countries. And of course, we also have the FTA between the EU and Singapore, which is also becoming a role model for the other countries in the region. So next slide, please. So now I'd like to touch upon some concrete opportunities for the EU businesses through the EVFTA. So I think that one of the most important opportunity we have to mention is export. So as we have mentioned before, through the EVFTA, the EU companies and businesses will gain access to Vietnam's large market with nearly 100 million consumers and further to the ASEAN markets. So EU export to Vietnam are expected to increase by 33% by 2025, so in about 5 years' time, and increase by 36.7% by 2030. Vietnam import tariff reduction under the EVFTA for the EU is as follows. So in the first year, I mean from the 1st of August, so 49.5% tariff lines will be eliminated, which is equivalent to 64.5% of EU export to Vietnam. And after 7 years, 91.8% of tariff lines will be eliminated for EU export. And after 10 years, so around 98% of tariff lines will be eliminated. And Vietnam is also committed to provide protection for 169 EU geographical indications, mostly include wine and food. And of course, the EU businesses and investors will be able to enjoy the benefits of streamlining and harmonization of procedures from both the EU and Vietnamese side. Next, please. Here, I would like to list some of the specific comment on some specific areas, which I believe that the EU investors and companies are very interested in. So for cars and spare parts and motorbikes, the import tariffs will be reduced to 0% after 9 years for high cylinder cars and 10 years for the other cars. And it will be reduced to 0% after 7 years for automobile parts. Oh, please come back, please. Yeah, and for the other sector, such as wine, spirit and beer, pork and chicken, milk and dairy products and machinery, you can see that the tariff will be reduced to 0% for a period from 7 to 9 years, and milk and dairy products 3 and 5 years. Next, please. And investment is also an area which we believe that the EU investor will have a big advantage through the EVFTA commitment, as the EVFTA aims at creating an open and favorable investment environment for businesses. And I have to say that our commitments in service within the EVFTA go further than those compared with our commitment within the WTO framework. And we provide ease of market access with no limitations on number of enterprises in the market, value of transaction, number of natural persons employed, unless some reservation, which is specified in our schedule. And we also commit to apply the national treatment and most favored nation treatment for the EU businesses and investors. Next, please. Here you can see that the commitment on services and investment for the EU investor in banking. So the EU credit institutions are favorably allowed to raise foreign ownership to around 49% of charter capital into Vietnamese joint stock commercial bank which is valid for a period of 5 years. And in terms of insurance, we allow cross-border cession of reinsurance and voluntary health insurance services according to our domestic law. And in terms of telecommunication, we have the same level of commitment as in CPTPP, which is very advanced. I can tell you that. And for value-added telecommunication services with our network infrastructure, EU company can set up wholly foreign-owned enterprises after a transition period. Next, please. And some other section like transportation, distribution, we also have very advanced commitment for the EU businesses, such as for empty container transport services. EU shipping lines could perform the services on all routes after 5 years. And we commit to abolish requirement of economic needs test after 5 years. And the EU enterprises is only required 1 license to perform import, distribution, wholesale, and retail activity, which is a very important step as we received the feedback from the EU business and investor recently. Next, please. So due to the time limit, I will not be able to come into greater detail on the other aspect, but I can guarantee you that under both the EVFTA and the investment protection agreement, the EU investor and company will receive better investment protection when you invest in Vietnam. And you have great chance to participate in Vietnam's government procurement market through clearly defined criteria concerning first the value of the procurement, second the procuring entity, and the goods and services. And if you are interested, you can find all the information which we have publicly public on our website, government website, and the website of the Ministry of Trade and Industry. Next, please. So finally, I would like to stress that the EU businesses are welcome to take advantage of the EVFTA, which our Prime Minister mentioned as the broad and modern expressway. And we believe that the EVFTA, together with other cooperation frameworks such as the Singapore-EU FTA, will foster EU-ASEAN trade and economic relations in the years to come. So with that, I would like to stop and my presentation, and thank you for your attention.
Vũ, thank you for your excellent and very comprehensive presentation. I would like to introduce now Ms. Nguyễn Thị Minh Huyền from E-Commerce and Digital Economy Agency under the MOIT. Ms. Huyền is among top experts of Vietnam e-commerce. With 18 years of experience, she is a holder of a doctorate degree on security solution for B2B e-commerce portal. Ms. Huyền will help us to understand potentials of Vietnam e-commerce market and new supporting policies for digital economy promulgated by Vietnam government. From this presentation, we hope that EU businesses can find new ideas, fresh energy, and novel strategy to connect and partner with Vietnamese businesses to mutually recover from COVID-19. Ms. Huyền, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank Ms. Quỳnh. Your Excellencies, Mr. Tào Thị Thanh Hương, Vietnam, the ambassador in Singapore. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As you know that the digital economy and e-commerce have developed tremendously in last 2 decades. They even proved stronger the key role for growth and national economy this year, even in the period of COVID-19, which has a really negative impact on activities and businesses. Therefore, it's my pleasure today to give you some idea about development of e-commerce in Vietnam and e-commerce legislation and supporting policy for digital economy. My talk today will focus into major issues. The first one is the snapshot of e-commerce in Vietnam, and the second one We give you more information about legislation and supporting policies for digital economy. Next slide, please. Next, please. As you could see in the chart, the total population in Vietnam estimated to reach 96 million in the year 2022. The fact that 70% of them has already used the internet make Vietnam become more very potential markets for e-commerce. Indeed, from the year 2000, next please. Indeed, from the year 2015-2019, the e-commerce growth rate is a strong double digits each year. As in the volume is in the year 2019, the total revenues get 10 billion US dollar. Last year, nearly half a population was an online shopper, and the e-commerce revenue account for nearly 5% of retail sale market. Next slide, please. According to the annual e-commerce report of my agency, the number of e-commerce websites and mobile apps was both witnessed a rise from the year 2018 to 2019. Although the businesses rate, the effectiveness of website is a bit lower than the year than last year, but I think it is normal because now the buyer have many selling channels to choose, such as mobile apps and e-marketplace. Next, please. So that's some facts about e-commerce development in Vietnam so far. And now I will talk about e-commerce legislation and supporting policy for digital economy. As you can see in the slide, the most fundamental legislation is the e-transaction law. Basically, this legislation was contracted based on ancestral model law on e-commerce and model law on electronic signature. The e-transaction law recognizes the legal validity of data message, which can take the form of electronic data interchange, telegram, and other similar forms. Under this law, an electronic signature with legal validity if technology use permits the identification of signatory and indicate approval of the content data message. In terms of consumer protection, we acknowledge customers are more vulnerable online than traditional one because they don't meet seller face-to-face and can't touch products they want to buy. And important information about sellers such as identity, the location, term and condition almost too long and complicated to reach and understand. Therefore, consumer protection law was adopted to ensure that online customers are provided with equal protection as traditional one. Data protection and privacy are also very crucial for e-commerce. According to law, consumers are provided more property policy to protect their data privacy when personal information is collected. Right now, my agency are working on revised decree number 52 on e-commerce, and hopefully it will be done the first quarter next year. The government, next please. The government in Vietnam consider digital transformation in the e-commerce is critical for growth and prosperity. Currently, we have 4 key legal documents for e-commerce and digital economy, such as Decision number 392, Directives number 16, Decision number 645, and Decision number 749. Next slide, please. In this slide, you could find the key solution of the e-commerce master plan in the period of 2021 to 2025. This master plan closely associates with strategies and policies, actively participate in Industrial 4.0 orientation of digital economy development and national digital transformation. Next, please. We also have a National Digital Transformation Program by the year 2025 to 2030. The program aims to solve challenges, make the most opportunity, explore Vietnam's unique advantage to fast and lead, create competitive advantage, attract resources, mobilize the strength of the entire population, train national rankings in the world. Our Prime Minister Nguyễn Xuân Phúc has clearly identified 6 points of this strategy. Those are transformation in awareness, development of tectonic institution, development of digital infrastructure, building up digital platform, building trust and cyber security protection. And the last one is promoting national cooperation, research, development and innovation in digital environment. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. In conclusion, there are 5 main measures we should immediately to support the growth of digital economy that are developing 4 models of digital enterprise, moving from processing and assembling into manufacturing products made in Vietnam, developing digital products, digital media marketing and creativity technologies, implementing programs facilitating micro, small and medium enterprises in traditional sector, manufacturing to apply digital technologies, and developing e-commerce. So it's all my talk to overview of e-commerce and supporting policies for digital economy. So I stop my presentation and thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Huyền, for your interesting presentation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Mr. Nicolas Audier. Mr. Nicolas Audier is chairman of Eurocharm Vietnam. He's also managing partner of Audier Partners law firm with more than 25 years of experience in Vietnam. He graduated from Paris University and New York University. His particular area of expertise are M&A, banking and finance, and capital markets. He's also actively involved in the EV-FTA discussion. He will deliver a presentation entitled European Business Perspective of the EV-FTA and what is needed for a successful implementation. Monsieur Audier, vous avez la parole.
Bonjour madame, je ne savais pas que vous étiez francophone. So, good morning everyone. I am actually from Ho Chi Minh City, from Vietnam. I would like to say hello to the Vietnam ambassador to Singapore. So good morning, Madame l'ambassadeur. Good morning also all my friends and colleagues from the MOIT probably from Hanoi or maybe from Ho Chi Minh City, Singapore. I see also many of my colleagues from Eurocharm. I saw that Jean-Jacques Boufflet, with whom I've been working for years and years on this FTA, is actually online. So yes, Eurocharm has been working on this EV-FTA and EV-IPA since basically the launching of the negotiation between Vietnam and the EU. As you may know, it started with the ASEAN-EU negotiation, and I forgot to mention Chris Humphrey from the ASEAN-EU association. We have been working a lot over the last years, and actually we are supposed to host in 2020 a big event because Vietnam is chairing the ASEAN community. So when we started the discussion 20 years ago on the ASEAN-EU, finally we switched to a Vietnam-EU with FTA. Now, as that has been said, the EV-FTA has been now implemented, but we have also another agreement which will be implemented when the 27 other EU Parliament will adopt this agreement. It is the EV-IPA, EV International Investment Protection Agreement, which is subject to the ratification of all the EU countries. We expect to get the ratification by 2021, 2022, but that is an agreement to protect the foreign direct investment in Vietnam and the Vietnam foreign direct investment in Europe. Now, today we're going to speak about the EV-FTA. I think when we say EV-FTA, F means free trade. And I think Madame Cecilia Malmström was very clear over the last 5 years of negotiation that is more than free trade. It's a free trade and fair trade. And this is why this EV-FTA is very ambitious. It's not only just trade and elimination of trade barrier and non-trade barriers, but that include many other areas of this of the spectrum of the relationship between EU and Vietnam. So, of course, it's include. I will start by what is the most that people know, which is the most visible, which is the tariff elimination. As someone say from our friend from MIT, 99% of the tariff, Vietnam, EU, and EU, Vietnam will be zero, custom zero as of basically 10 years. But even since the implementation of the EV-FTA, so August 1st, we have already 65% of the EU export to Vietnam are zero tariff, and 71% of Vietnamese export has no custom duty in Europe. So I see a question on the Q&A that include 50% of the pharmaceutical industry product, 70% of the chemical product, that include the machinery, appliance, so they are fully liberalized as of August 1st. Of course, some other sectors, such as the wine and spirit, motorbike, cars, will be liberalized by the next 7 or 10 years. But tariff elimination is fine, but what is the main concern, and that maybe address the concern of our friend from the pharmaceutical industry, is the technical barrier to trade. Even if you have a zero custom duty, the issue is what are the technical barrier to trade. We have, at the level of Eurocharm, we have received many requests from the pharmaceutical industry, since we have a non-tariff barrier, meaning that if you want to export EU product to Vietnam, you need to have some clarity on the way you sell in Vietnam. And the EV-FTA provide a huge chapter on the labeling of the product, on the licensing, on the sub-licensing, on the baby licensing to sell EU product to Vietnam. So there is a huge chapter which promote standardized document to make sure that the license requested in Vietnam are in line with international principle, or that they are in line with the market. So chapter is important because it's connected to tariff elimination. If we have a zero custom duty, we need also to have the right to sell product in Vietnam, and that is actually the issue in some of the industry. There's a big chapter on intellectual property right. I think Madame the Ambassador mentioned the coffee. As you know, the EU-FTA recognized 169 what we call in Europe geographical indication. So it means that we don't protect the trademark, we protect the process. So understand you, I think coffee is one of the general geographical indication, but that also include, I think, Nyok-Mam, which is protected as the geographical indication, and that include, of course, other goods such as cheese and wine and all alcohol. Another chapter, and the previous speaker mentioned the e-economy. There is another chapter on the market access for investment. And interesting, many elements, many new area of investment are connected to the e-economy. I just think about the education system, where now we could have online education investment, but that includes many other chapters. I see a better access. We mentioned distribution services. The MIT speaker mentioned that after 5 years, there is no what we call the economic need test, meaning that any EU company having wishing to export product or establish a distribution network in Vietnam will not be subject to many license and sub-licensing. There is opening of some area in the maritime transport services. So there is new area, new opportunity for foreign direct investment. Chapter also on what we call the trade and sustainable development, meaning that, and this is the fair trade, not the free trade, but the fair trade. When EU started discussion with Vietnam, they wanted to ensure that all the principles, for example, on the ILO Convention, the International Labour Organization provision will be implemented in Vietnam, prevention of a labor force market or independence of the syndicate. So there's a huge chapter on the EVFTA to ensure that the social right and labor law in Vietnam is in line with the international principle. And that is the case in Vietnam. Also, other commitment, follow commitment, for example, on the convention on the biological diversities. So many UN agreements has to be signed, ratified, and implemented in Vietnam. One other chapter interesting on the non-tariff barrier to trade and investment in renewable energy. That is interesting because now Vietnam has agreed to join the climate agreement of the Paris Climate Agreement years ago, and they are encouraging foreign direct investment or trade in goods and services in renewable energy. And interesting enough, I see a lot of company from Singapore, or foreign company based in Singapore, investing in Vietnam, especially in the renewable energy, rooftop, solar panel, because this is a new niche of foreign direct investment. I would like also to mention some regulation on the antitrust and merger, which make Vietnam more to ensure a level playing field in Vietnam between state-owned enterprise, Vietnamese enterprise, and foreign direct enterprise in Vietnam, with the ultimate objective to have a fair way of doing business in Vietnam. There is also a chapter on the trade remedy. Of course, when you sign an FTA, there is a way, if you don't agree on any regulation of if there is a breach by one of the party of the FTA, so there is a way to address the concern. What is interesting that there is, if you have any issue, if you have any breach, you have a committee of trade which shall discuss the position of each party before launching a claim. So this is a very broad snapshot of this EVFTA. Now the main issue of the EVFTA will be its implementation in Vietnam, because as you may remember, the WTO agreement was was signed years ago, but it took some time to make it enforced in Vietnam. So we are working closely with the Ministry with the MOIT, the MPI, and of course the Office of the Government to ensure that the EVFTA will be applicable between both sides, Vietnam to EU and EU to Vietnam. And this is why we are going to launch soon a special business council with the VCCI in Vietnam and EuroCham to ensure that the provision of this EVFTA will be fully implemented. This EVFTA, we are extremely confident that it will boost trade between Vietnam and Europe-Vietnam. Over the last months with my colleague from EuroCham, we had many meetings with the MOIT to help Vietnamese product to be exported to Europe. You mentioned fruit. We are in discussion with some Benche province to help to give the best advice how to export Vietnamese fruit, coconuts, dragon fruit, mango, so to the European market. So you have many requirements to meet. We are also in discussion with the with the MOIT on the fishing export to Europe, on the wooden product from Vietnam to Europe. As you know, Vietnam is a key exporter of furnitures. And of course, we're helping the industries in Vietnam on the best way to export their product in Europe, but also in the other way. We are also working a lot with the pharmaceutical industry to ensure that there is no more technical barrier to export EU medical product to Vietnam, and we do the same with the wine and spirit industry. So the conclusion of EuroCham is that it will boost the trade between the two. Between the two countries. We are confident that Vietnam will be fair. They will provide a fair and equitable treatment to companies doing business in Vietnam. We are also confident that Vietnam have the potential, the capacity to become the hub of the ASEAN economic community investment. Why? Because many companies in Europe will not invest only in Vietnam, but they will take the benefits of the ASEAN economic community. So that is not only a market of 90 million people, but basically 600 million people. So that's a big opportunity for EU company. So yes, at the end of in conclusion of all of that, the EuroCham in Vietnam is fully confident, very happy. And if you go on my slide, page 3, voila, you see we make the survey on our members. We have 1,200 members in Vietnam in all the industry. And as you see, on the long term, 91% of the EU company doing business in Vietnam are very confident that thanks to the EVFTA, their business will increase. Thank you very much for that invitation to speak at your seminars.
Thank you, Mr. Odier, for your very clear and informative of what is still ahead to improve the implementation of the EVFTA. Now we have a little more time to answer your question. Let's welcome Ms. Sangari Kirupalini, Advocacy and Member Manager of EU-ASEAN Business Council. She will be encouraging and moderating our discussion. Ms. Sangari, please.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tran. First and foremost, please let me extend our sincere gratitude for all the panelists and the ambassador for taking time off your busy schedules to share this insightful perspectives of the EVFTA. Perhaps, if I may, I would like to remind all panelists that are listening to post all of your questions on the Q&A tab, and I will try my best to get through all of them with all of the panelists over the next course of 45 minutes. But ahead of that, if I may ask some questions that on the behalf of our members at the EU-ADC. And this question is for Ambassador. So a few of our members have actually raised concerns regarding labor mobility in Vietnam. If I may, I'll give you a quick example. During COVID-19, and when the pandemic had struck, there was a little bit of issue for European businesses to allow a lot of skilled labor to come to inspection sites, for example, to have a quick look before giving the final tick. And this kind of labor mobility and difficulties have impacted their strategies. So if I may ask, how is Vietnam looking to improve the situation in the long run? And another follow-up question is, what are Vietnam's long-term plans to enhance labor skills as well in Vietnam?
Thank you, Shangri. Em ơi, chứ rồi. Okay, you are asking about the labor mobility. Okay. In the time of COVID-19.
Yes.
Could you hear me? Could you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Travel restrictions. So that's a restriction to labor mobility. But that's good news for us that the Vietnam government has lifted the 14-day quarantine at a dedicated facility for foreigners who enter Vietnam, especially for experts, managers, and visitors with official and diplomatic purpose. Now, if they come to Vietnam for working with less than 14 days, they don't have to apply the compulsory 14-day quarantine, but they must comply strictly the regulation on COVID-19 prevention and protection. Now, I would like to give some information and details about this regulation. Experts and businesses should have or sponsor for you who get the approval for your entry into Vietnam. And the sponsor or inviter should have a plan of entry, transportation, and accommodation and workplace, and measures to ensure safety for working process. And sponsor should get approval from the province or ministries concerned. That's the getting approval. The second thing, before arrival, experts and businesses should have international medical insurance, or sponsor should commit to pay expenses for treatment if they are positive with COVID-19. And they should have a test for COVID-19 with negative result before their entry into Vietnam. This test should be done within 3 to 5 days before their departure. Experts must enter Vietnam 1 day before their working plan. On arrival and during their stay in Vietnam, experts must present their negative result, the COVID-19 test, upon their arrival. And they must fully declare the electronic medical upon the entry using a blue zone app during their stay in Vietnam.
Thank you so much for that, Ambassador.
And then one more, yeah, before departure, they should take the test 1 day before the departure. And the sample test will be due 2 days, every 2 days. If they wish to stay more than 14 days, they're free to do so without quarantine.
Okay.
Better for experts now, even they want to stay in Vietnam at a short time. And in the time to come, Singapore will be in our list for commercial flights. So it will create many facilities, business who stay in Singapore to enter Vietnam to do business there. And thank you. If you have more information, I'm pleased to clarify.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. We look forward for the commercial flights to happen soon. We do miss going to Vietnam from Singapore at least. If I may move back to the EVFTA and a question for perhaps for both Mr. Wu and for Nikolai as well. Perhaps because the EVFTA, as what we've learned from this morning's discussion, is that it is extremely wide-ranging and it covers a variety of sectors. So perhaps if we could drill down a little bit in the details, and if I may ask, which sectors, in your opinion, do you think are earmarked for development through the EVFTA, and how best can European businesses work with local Vietnamese enterprises to expedite the development of these sectors? Perhaps we'll start with Mr. Wu, after which we'll get Nikolai. Thank you so much, Mr. Wu.
Thank you for the question. So regarding your point on the sectors which can benefit from the FTA. So as I mentioned during my presentation, in my personal view, I think that for the immediate future, the export sectors will benefit a lot from the EVFTA, as this sector will benefit from the reduction of tariffs. So we all know that after the EVFTA took effect, Vietnam will lower tariff to European export by almost 50%, which is equivalent to 65% of EU export to Vietnam. So particularly, I think that there are some certain sectors will benefit largely, including the manufacturing products from the EU side, as well as agriculture and some processed food. However, over the longer term, I think that many other sectors will receive the large benefits from the EVFTA as the two sides continue to reduce tariff and open market, which includes the service and investment market. Particularly from the Vietnamese side, we expect to receive increased investment from EU side in such sectors as banking, finance, investment, logistics, transportation, etc. And how should the European can take advantage of the EVFTA? So we believe that the EVFTA will benefit European companies and investors as they will receive better treatment in terms of protection, in terms of market open. And from our experiment of implementing the FTA with previous partners such as Korea and Japan, we found that after the implementation of those FTA, trade investment between Vietnam and Japan, trade investment relations between Vietnam and Korea increased significantly. So we look for the same direction in Vietnam-EU bilateral economic relations. And I think that the European companies in general and the European investor in Singapore have certain advantage to benefit from the EVFTA as they have gained a lot of experience from doing business with the regional countries and their geographical proximity. So this is even more important as we are witnessing the reconfiguration of the regional supply chains and regional value chains due to the impact of COVID and then some other development. So in the near future and as well as over the longer term, we expect to receive increased interest from the European companies to Vietnam. Thank you.
Yes, Sengari, do you want me to continue on that, Sengari?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah. So I think I see on the chat many questions. I think obviously immediately the trade between Vietnam and Europe to Vietnam will increase. Unfortunately, this year we have the COVID. So we had last year's 2019, we had forecasted many trade visits from many countries. We are working with Chris Humphrey from the ASEAN EU Council to promote Vietnam, and we are expecting to have we were expected a lot of a trade mission from the 27 EU countries. Unfortunately, that has been cancelled, but that has an impact on the trade between EU and Vietnam to EU, but still, Vietnam will still be positive. I understand that today Vietnam is still on the positive trade balance, and the GDP will increase in 2020 not as much as expected, but anyhow, it's Vietnam is the business in Vietnam is still doing not so bad. We expect a lot of, we have seen, but that is nothing connected to COVID or nothing connected to the to what we had this year. Is we have seen many textile companies delocalizing their or shifting their production from China to Vietnam. Simply because to anticipate the benefit of the textile reduction tariff to the EU market. So we have seen a lot of companies producing shoes, garment, textile. Even Samsung will increase its export from Vietnam to Europe to benefit from the EV-FTA. So that's a good news for Vietnam because you have attracted many high quality, I mean, especially in the electronic sectors in Vietnam to boost the export of Vietnam to the EU market. On the trade export of Vietnamese product, of course, we anticipate not a boom, but an increase of the trade. Be aware that to access to the EU market, the standard is pretty high. This is why we had regular meeting with the MOIT. At least for the food industry, we have what we call the SPS, sanitary, phytosanitary requirement. So it means that when you enter the EU market, the product has to fulfill all the complex regulation on the SPS. So Vietnam companies and Vietnam certificate company has to be aware of that, and this is what we do at the level of Shurasham. We try to help Vietnamese exporter to ensure that they will comply with the EU market. Now, when I see many questions on the chat of the EU export to Vietnam, especially on the sub-license and license, as I was telling during my presentation, tariff elimination is fine to get zero custom duty or reduction of custom duty, but what is very important is the technical barrier. Of course, I don't want to give any name, but we are quite concerned for, I'll speak, of course, to our Madame l'Ambassadeur and our colleague from the MOIT, that too many sub-license sub-certificates have been agreed to be taken something like a year ago, so before the entry into force of the EV-FTA, which make the EU export product to Vietnam more complicated. And this is what we had a meeting on this week with the EU ambassador and the EU trade mission to warn, to explain. We will have a meeting in 2 weeks' time with the Office of the Government in Hanoi, because we see many sub-license which will have an effect on the EU trade to Vietnam. And I see the case also in the car. I see one question on the chat in the car industry, accessories and car coming from the EU market. We have a lot of non-tariff barrier. As you know, the standard we have within the EU, the UNECE standard, which is the highest standard on the car industries worldwide, and all the products which are produced within the EU market fulfill the UNECE requirements. So it's difficult for many exporters to understand why we have to continue again to have a new standard, which make the process of exporting goods from EU to Vietnam more complicated. I think now, because I see another question on the SME support. Now the Vietnamese government has established a kind of fast track for foreign direct investment, but basically for major foreign direct investment in Vietnam, because again, as I said at the beginning, we expect from the FTA a huge major EU foreign direct investment in Vietnam, and the Vietnamese government, I mean the Vietnamese Prime Minister of Vietnam, has launched a fast track or kind of a group to accelerate and promote Vietnam as a very good venue for the major investment in Vietnam. For the SME, I see a question for the SME. So far, there is no maybe someone can comment from the Vietnamese side, but I haven't seen any SME support for SMEs from Europe exporting to Vietnam. Now, as of today, it is the EuroCham which is actually helping EuroCham and its 9 business associations. So that include the German, the French, or the Spanish, Italian, Beluxam, etc., etc. So we are helping SMEs to export product from Europe to Vietnam. As of today, the main question we receive from our members are the list of the new tariff duty. Just to give you the volume of the FTA, this is the FTA. This is the FTA, but what is the most important document is the FTA itself. It's a very small document, it's 169 pages, very simple. But the bulk of the FTA is actually the tariff elimination. So every day at EuroCham, we receive many requests to give the new tariff line on the product, export or import. The good news, the FTA has been implemented as of August 1st. The good news that a few days ago, I think it was yesterday or Monday, the Vietnamese Ministry of Finance has taken a decree to give the full treatment to eliminate, and that will be retroactive as of August 1st. So anyone who has exported EU product after August 1st, and if they have paid the full tariff, will be reimbursed. To benefit from the EU FTA. So the Vietnamese government is taking the right measures. They help the Vietnamese SMEs. We have regular meeting with the MOIT just to help to see how each side, each Vietnamese companies and EU company can benefit from the FTA.
Thank you so much, Nicola. If I may just switch gears a little bit to address some of the questions that are coming in as well. Perhaps we could move a little bit towards digital transformation and how this EBFJ aids with Vietnam's e-commerce sector. So if I may ask Ms. Nguyen, the question that's coming in is, are there opportunities for foreign cloud service providers to work with Vietnamese e-commerce platforms, especially those that are government-owned? Sorry, Ms. Nguyen, you're muted. We can't hear you. Yes, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Sangwari. As you may know, Vietnam is in the period of building legal framework for cyber security, including personal data protection, and we also have a comprehensive legal framework for e-commerce right now. I just call your attention on the law on cyber security has come into effect since the year 2019, and now the Ministry of Public Affairs has a work on guiding for that law, and the decree under that law hopefully will be into effect in the end of this year. Vietnam is going to wrap the decree on personal data protection, and will have our framework more comprehensive to build up a health environment for both businesses in general and e-commerce in particular, and also facilitate digital economy. From what we have in FTAs and RTAs, as well as international cooperation, Vietnam supports data flows in chart with conducting business objectives while respect domestic policies and regulation. I believe that Vietnam government is in good efforts to facilitate digital economy and in general, and e-commerce in particular.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nguyen. If I may just ask a follow-up question regarding the cybersecurity law that has just been mandated. Would there be any future rounds of consultation or to get to the final draft with private sector representatives?
Sorry, I can't hear your question.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
So before the final draft is going to be released, will there be any rounds of public consultation or private consultations with businesses in Vietnam?
Yeah. As I said in my presentation, our Prime Minister has issued the national strategy on digital transformation by the year 2025 to 2030. Besides the revolution 52, as I mentioned, the importance of digital skill as well as digital consultation, technology innovation consultation have been reflected in the whole of document, and it is one of the key factors for success of digital transformation. Although the requirement for digital skills may be very important for small and micro, small and medium enterprises in Vietnam. So I think there have many opportunities for Euro companies to go to Vietnam in this field, especially in digital consultation for macro, to push up digital skill for small and medium enterprises. In addition, master plan on e-commerce development in the period of the year 2021-2025, human resource development in e-commerce sector is one of 5 important objectives to be achieved by the year 2025. Therefore, it's regarding, I think, have a lot of space for cooperation which aim to enhancing digital skills for Vietnam enterprises. We welcome the detailed proposal from EU companies to support the government in this matter.
Thank you so much for the clarification, Ms. Huan.
Shangari?
Yes, Dr.
May
Tran.
I add something? As regards your question, I would like to share that in our legislative drafting process, normally we will have different round of consultations. We will organize different workshops in different provinces in Vietnam to collect opinions from different stakeholders, including FDI companies. And after the consultation, the first round of consultation, during the review by the different agency inside the government, we still continue the second round of consultation via the government portal. That means we will publish the draft law on the government portal to collect opinions for 60 days. So FDI companies and other stakeholders in the countries are invited to contribute opinions to give us your opinions to help us to ensure the coherence and compatibility in terms of law building process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tran. And since we're still on the topic of digital economy, and if I may ask a question, because for every ambassador, Dr. Vu, and all the panelists have echoed the idea of digital transformation, Vietnam moving up the value chain, and how best can European companies support this. And what is key in order for Vietnam to also move up the value chain is the idea of intellectual property rights. So one of the questions that's come in is, how will Vietnam IP law be revised to be able to accommodate IP for IT in the EVFTA? Perhaps we could start with Ms. Huan again, and then anyone else who would like to add to that, please feel free. So if I may repeat the question again, Ms. Huan, it is, how will Vietnam's IP laws be revised to be able to accommodate IP for the tech sector? And how is this being explored in the EVFTA? Perhaps Mr. Wu or Nikolai would also like to take this question, please.
Mr. Wu, you want to start?
I'd like to hear from the other speaker first.
Okay, so yeah, so there is, as I was saying, there is a chapter on the intellectual property right. So Vietnam is already party to many treaties on intellectual property right. The issue, as usual, is to ensure that it is fully implemented. So there is statement in this EVFTA to reassure, to guarantee that this statement has been, what has been agreed will be effectively implemented. So, for example, there is, Vietnam has applied for the YPO recommendation on the protection of well-known trademark. They have acceded to the Hague Convention on the design. They have an extension regulation on the patent. There is regulation on the protection of undisclosed information and data. There is some regulation on the plant variety, which include all the convention on the protection of the international convention on the protection of new variety of plant. So you have many new regulation and also regulation to ensure that past regulation should be enforced. You have a chapter on the enforcement, again, to ensure that all regulation has been will be enforced in Vietnam. You have regulation on copyright, also, especially we'll accede to the WIPO Internet Treaty. So all the copyright treaty on the performance and phonogram treaty, etc., etc., etc. If you want a copy of all the technical, because it's highly technical, and I see probably the question was read by an IPR lawyers, I can be happy to give you more detail on the IPR part of the FTA.
Thank you so much, Nikolai. Would any of the panelists like to add to what Mr. Nikolai has just said? Mr. Wu?
Yes. On the technical side, I would not have much to add, just provide you with some general information. So perhaps you know that right after the EVFTA takes effect, so our government adopted a master plan to implement the agreement. And in that master plan, we also provide a roadmap to revise the law on intellectual property rights. And it is expected that the revised law will be adopted next year. So we look forward to new development in this area. And of course, we will take into all the commitment under the FTA. So we look forward for the good news next year. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wu. Perhaps if I could switch gears a little bit to better understand how companies, European companies based in Singapore, would be able to best leverage this FTA. The question for you, Dr. Tran, is how will Singapore businesses augment the EVFTA? In particular, the value of Singapore businesses in this FTA, in the value chain, and furthermore, what are the opportunities that these businesses can look forward to?
Thank you for your question. I just want to share that the EVFTA allows the flexible rules of origin or the accumulation of raw materials and parts sourced from countries that both EU and Vietnam signed the FTA, for example, Korea, Japan, and Singapore. So for companies attempting to benefit from tariff reduction, including Singaporean companies, so the challenge is to manufacture goods in a way that make the most profit from the different FTA that we are member. So yeah, for the Singapore companies, for example, we would like to insist on the aspect that we can further collaborate on the trade in services as well, because the EVFTA and the ESFTA open a lot of new opportunities for the trade in services, especially the e-commerce exhibition services, delivery services, ship repair and maintenance, logistics services, for example. And especially for Vietnam, Singapore and European will receive the equal treatment between EU and Vietnam's state-owned companies in this new area of investment. And also for the renewable energy, for example, it also opened a new level playing field for investor. Company investing in this sector will not be required to form partnership with local companies or local sourcing requirement, for example. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tran. We've also got questions coming in terms to better understand how the EVFTA can help particular businesses. And perhaps this question is for the entire panel. And the question then is, what information and where can businesses go to better understand the benefits of the EVFTA, and how then can they leverage on these? Is there any online government portals that is distributed according to different sectors where there's an exchange of information? Perhaps Dr. Tran or even Ambassador, if you may be able to take the question to better guide, I guess, businesses that are based both in Singapore and in Vietnam to be able to better capitalize on the opportunities that the EVFTA presents.
So maybe on the, as for EuroCham, because we receive many requests from SMEs and even MNC from Europe, and the same from Vietnamese side. So I think the best thing to do, you have access, I don't know if you can see that, but this is the EVFTA. So it's only 186 pages. That doesn't include the annexes, of course, which I showed before. This document, the EVFTA, is accessible on the, I will send you if you need the website, I mean the connection. It's accessible in 22 languages. So there is no excuse of language. It is in German, French, Italian, Serb, Croatian, Swedish, Danish. So you have in any languages, and it's a very clear document. And the good news that any languages will I mean, there is no one language which prevails. So you have whatever document you have, it's a good, it's final document. So it's accessible on the website. It's a very clear document, well drafted, very simple, not too technical. The documents which are technical are obviously the annexes, because that refers to many convention, treaty, and when I was mentioning the IPR, that refers to many past treaties which has been signed by Vietnam or by the by EU. So it's a very simple document. Now, at the level of EuroCham, so EuroCham, we have 17 sector committee, which include all the diversity of the EU business in Vietnam. So it's come from wine and spirit, from automotive sectors, pharmaceutical industry. So we are, all these sector committee are able to provide input, knowledge, expertise on their industry. So if you have an SME is willing to do business in Vietnam on whatever sectors, whatever sector among the 17 sectors industry, you can get the information. Also at the level of EuroCham, we are monitoring the since we started the last, we prepare before the implementation of the FTA, but now it's officially since August 1st. So we are monitoring the implementation of the FTA. So we're able to provide any information. let's say, general information, because we cannot do detailed information, because if we receive thousands of requests, it will be impossible to handle that. But we are able to provide general information on the certificate, on the licensing, on the tariff of any EU product export to Vietnam, and the same for Vietnam export to the to Europe.
Thank you so much, Nikolai. Yes, Ambassador.
Some business ask whether they should have advantages for their business who are located in Singapore, right? And
Yes.
yeah, that because both Singapore and Vietnam have a free trade agreement with EU. So business who are located in Singapore should have many advantages when they relocate or they have a company in Vietnam, because they can enjoy the advantages of tax and tax facility and other rights. With regard to the particular sector or business companies, we have a trade section, and Mr. Chen Quinn is our commercial counselor. You can contact the embassy. We will help you to find out what advantages, what benefits your particular business should get from this free trade agreement, because there's a very detailed, like Mr. Nicholas Ogier said, very thick document. So we will help you to find the benefit you can get. And Chen Quinn, could you please provide your maybe contact number, email, or and telephone number, so that business can contact you easier. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. Sorry, Dr. Tran.
Yeah, thank you, Ambassador. First of all, from the MOIT, I would like to share the portal of the MOIT for the EVFTA with our plan to implement and other related agency, and also the chat icon to answer to the requests from Vietnamese companies and other updated information relating to the EVFTA. But regrettably that until now the portal is only in Vietnamese, and as mentioned earlier, our ambassador, the Trade Office of Vietnam Embassy here in Singapore, we are the representative of the MOIT based in Singapore. So we can support the EU MNCs based here in Singapore, as well as other multinational companies based here in Singapore, and also Singaporean companies in the process to enter into Vietnam market, both in terms of trade and investment. So I would like to share our contact details. Yeah, you can take a picture of our contact detail here, and please visit our website also via vntradesc.org, and here is our email address. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tran. I'll be sure to send all of our attendees the MOIT's contact details, office based in Singapore, and of course the embassies as well. I really think that our members, HQ here, would really appreciate this efforts and help to better understand the EVFTA. Perhaps if I make this, since we're on the topic of Singapore and businesses in Singapore as well, there's a particular question just for Nikolai, but perhaps for the whole panel as well, is would you be able to outline perhaps one or two key differences between the EVFTA and the free trade agreement between Singapore and the EU? Just perhaps one or two key differences.
Well, I had a look at the Singapore FTA a while ago when we were when Vietnam was still negotiating the EV FTA. Singapore, Vietnam, and Canada are actually the new generation of the FTA, which the EU has signed. So that include all issues which are not non-economical issue. As I was saying before, it's not a free trade, it's a free and fair trade. So that includes many other issues, so climate change, green energy, renewable energy, everything. It's difficult to give you the answer because, of course, the level of development of Singapore is not at the same level of the development of Vietnam. Vietnam and the EU is a very complementary market. And this is why it was easy to reach a consensus between Vietnam economy and EU economy. What Vietnam produce, EU doesn't produce, and what EU produce, Vietnam produce. So in a way, it was a very complementary FTA. With Singapore, it's not the same because Singapore, to some extent, Singapore in a way, the economy even though it's a small, it's a city-state, but the economy is complementary, especially for the service industry, bank, finance, insurance company, telecom industry. So medical sectors, pharmaceutical sectors. So it was more complicated because the economy are more or less parallel. I don't know if that addresses the concern of one of your members. One thing I would like to ask, to say that the EU-Vietnam FTA is actually for any services, goods coming from one of the EU company to Vietnam and vice versa. Of course, Madame Quy from the Vietnam embassy mentioned the cumulative right. But obviously in Singapore, it will be difficult to see EU company producing cars and at a large scale or producing, investing $600 million in a port like we see now in Cai Mep, south of Vietnam, because obviously Singapore has everything. And we don't expect to have any textile company shifting from China to Singapore to export on the EU market. So it's difficult to give a clear answer to your participants.
Thank you, Nikolai. I do agree, but yes, Dr. Tran, would you like to add?
Yeah, I would like to add a bit that as Singapore as a free trade hub, so in general, the ESFTA did not have a big impact on the trading between Singapore and the EU. And for the ESFTA, the only one advantage for Singaporean consumers is the fact that Singapore will eliminate the last remaining tariff for alcoholic beverages. It is the last line of tariff imposing between the EU and Singapore. Vice versa, the EU will remove 84% of all its tariff for goods originating in Singapore, with additional reduction for the remaining 16% in the coming years. And as earlier in our Q&A, there is a question relating the capacity to collaborate between Vietnamese and Singaporean companies. I would like to insist that with the ESFTA, EU, as Singaporean companies, you will have an annual quota of 1,250 tons for different ASEAN food products. And if you source raw materials from Vietnam, for example, you can enjoy the tariff exemption to access the EU market. And until now, as far as I know, Singaporean businesses still not profit from this quota at all. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that explanation, Dr. Tran. Since we are discussing the free trade agreement with Singapore, if I may ask this question to all the panelists, is how do you think that ASEAN is able to leverage the EU-Vietnam FTA and the EU-Singapore FTA to a much wider EU-ASEAN FTA? Is that something that's possible? Is that something that we should be working towards? And if you may even share with me what your perspectives are on a timeline in achieving such an ambitious region-to-region FTA. Perhaps I would start with Ambassador to share your insights on the possibility of a region-to-region FTA, and then we can go down and ask every panelist. Ambassador, please.
Thank you. A good question. The EU-ASEAN free trade agreement should be in our vision. Now, there's some good news that the ASEAN is, strengthening economic integration within the ASEAN bloc. And now only Singapore and Vietnam have signed a free trade agreement with EU, but in the time to come, I think that other ASEAN members will also join free trade agreement with EU, and it is in the mutual interest of both EU and ASEAN members. So it's only a matter of time, I think.
Thank you so much. We share your optimism as well. Perhaps I would also get Mr. Wu and then Ms. Huan, and then lastly, Dr. Nikolai to share their perspectives. Mr. Wu, please.
I share the view expressed by Her Excellency Ambassador. So we all agree that the ASEAN and EU are becoming more and more important partners of each other. So this year, as Vietnam assumed the chairmanship of ASEAN, we have been closely working with the other ASEAN partner member states to increase our economic and trade cooperation with the EU. And as I mentioned in my presentation, I think that the FTA between the EU and the individual ASEAN member state, which includes the EVFTA and the FTA between the EU and Singapore, will be an important step in furthering the EU trade and investment relations with ASEAN member states. And I would like to emphasize that the EVFTA and the FTA between Singapore and EU will not only benefit Singapore or Vietnam, but will benefit all the ASEAN member countries, as the EU will have more interest in furthering their trade and economic relations with the ASEAN member states. And the EVFTA and the FTA between Singapore and EVFTA will help to create a favorable investment business environment for the EU investor. So I think that those are important steps for us to believe in a brighter prospect of EU ASEAN trade and economic cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wu. Mr. Wu. Ms. Ren, what are your perspectives on the possibility of region-to-region FTA?
Thank you. As you might know already, Vietnam is coordinator for EU-ASEAN dialogue relations. So we are actively promoted the dialogue and information exchanges between the EU and ASEAN to boost the research and negotiation on the draft framework of a future ASEAN-EU FTA. And we reached the final stage of the approving the agreement and the consensus reached on the framework in Singapore in 2018. And as Vietnam this year is the chairman of the ASEAN, we hope that the annual dialogue between EU-ASEAN will advance and the different interests can be solved between our EU and ASEAN partners. And we also count on the support from the EU-ASEAN Business Council as well as Eurocham to accelerate the dialogue and the mutual understanding to make the framework and the consensus on the ASEAN-EU FTA possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tran. Ms. Moran, how about your perspectives on the region-to-region FTA?
in my point of view, in EVFTA and EU-ASEAN, we have a trade in services, investment, and e-commerce, in which almost commitments in this agreement is much more than what we have in WTO, and that reflects the weaknesses and bigger cooperation in cross-border services, including e-commerce, I think.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ran. And if I may now shift to Dr. Nikolai, in terms of your perspectives of the possibility of a region-to-region FTA, and how best can other countries such as Thailand and Indonesia leverage on the current FTAs?
Yeah, thank you, Shanghai. And this is a very good question. And probably this is the conclusion of our 2 hours meeting. What you are asking is the key question. I'm sure you know that, but 25 years ago, EU and ASEAN, they tried to have a EU-ASEAN FTA. We tried hard, but finally the discussion didn't go on for many reasons, because many countries were at different stage of development. Some countries, they have a political system which is not the same than the other countries. So it was difficult to have a consensus at the EU level and ASEAN level to have an FTA. And this is why EU decided to have finally bilateral investment treaty and trade treaty. So of course, Vietnam is, I think, the good example of the region, because the DOIMO started in 1987. And since 1987, Vietnam is probably one of the most global country. Vietnam signed many FTA. In 30 years time, Vietnam changed its economy. So this is why it was, I couldn't say it was easy, because of course, between EU and Vietnam, the discussion were intense, but after 10 years, the FTA has been signed, an IPA has been signed, and that is to be given to the credit of Vietnam, which is really now entering into the 21st century. For the other countries, and Singapore, of course, was assigned. For the other country, as you know, many FTA with ASEAN countries are on discussion. You mentioned Thailand, but it's difficult for political reason in Thailand. It's difficult to see with the current new commission. As you know, we have a new commission in Europe last September 2019. It's difficult to see what will be the position of the commission and the parliament. The EVFTA of Vietnam was supposed to be approved with the preceding parliament in 2019, but finally, and it was supposed to be the last one, and finally it has been approved by the new commission and the new parliament. So, and that is the first one. I'm sure you are following in Europe the issue of the Mercosur, which is a kind of similar agreement with Mercosur like ASEAN. And I understand that many EU countries now are not very favorable of signing an FTA. So I would say we have, to answer your question, we have two components. The business, obviously, they want to have an FTA between ASEAN and EU, that's for sure. So any companies in ASEAN, any companies in Europe would like to have an ASEAN, because at the end of the day, ASEAN itself is one of the top 5 probably economic zone that EU is doing business. You have, of course, the US, you have Japan, you have China, and then you have, of course, the ASEAN. So ASEAN for Europe is crucial. And I can tell in front of our Vietnamese friend that with my colleague at EuroCham in Vietnam, we are pushing the voice of Vietnam and pushing the voice of the ASEAN. But that it is the business position. Now we have the political decision. And in Europe, now, like the same in the US, in same of many other countries, we have many members of the parliament who are not willing to open, not willing to free trade agreement. Voilà. And not because of free trade, but not free trade issue, like human rights issue, labor law issue, environmental issue. So we have to convince the members of the parliament in Europe that all the non-economic issue will be fulfilled if an FTA is signed. It's what we said for Vietnam. Thanks to the FTA in Vietnam, the FTA will have an impact not only to the business people, but to the whole population of Vietnam. Whole population of Vietnam. It will impact everyone, the farmer, the student. Why? Because Vietnam is definitely now entering into the 21st century with all the international standards. So, but take some time. It's a political issue rather than a business issue. Thank you, Sangari.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nikolai. We do agree, the EU-ABC as well, although we remain optimistic for RCEP and the region-to-region FTA to come into fruition in due time. We totally understand the political undercurrents as well, but we do hope for the best and we do remain optimistic. Before I pass my time back over to Dr. Tran, if I may ask a final question for all the panelists before we wrap up today's session, and that is that the EU-Vietnam FTA, it is one of its kind, and as what Dr. Nikolai has said on multiple occasions, that it's not about free trade, it's about fair trade. And this is a new introduction for many businesses that are in Vietnam and even for some that are headquartered in Singapore. So I guess my question to all the panelists is, what is your advice for businesses that are based even in Singapore or in Vietnam to be able to take full benefit of this emerging FTA that has got both economic and strong sustainability clauses? How can they find the balance moving forward? What would be your advice? Perhaps we'll start with the ambassador and then we'll ask everyone and then we will proceed to conclude.
Okay, again, very good question. I think my advice to businesses that you should follow the laws on environment, IP laws and other regulations, so that you will have both benefit and also sustainable development. If you have a benefit in the short run, but you don't observe the laws, you should have you don't have a sustainable development, but you should check on both this side of this agreement.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. Perhaps we will ask Dr. Wu for his advice for businesses that are listening in this morning.
I think that like the EU, Vietnam support free, open, fair and rule-based trade. That's why together with the EU, we have been pushing for the ratification and implementation. The European and the regional business are having very good opportunities to enhance their presence and their business in the region. I mean the whole ASEAN region. As we are witnessing the reconfiguration of the supply chain, and due to the even the ASEAN region also receiving the impact from COVID-19, but the perspective for the region, I think, over the long for in terms of economic development. So I think that right at the moment, the European investor and business are having very big chances in expanding their activities and presence in ASEAN. So I think that the ASEAN and the EU governments have been trying very hard to realize those opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wu. Perhaps we'll hear from Ms. Nguyen now, from your perspectives, on how can we best get the balance between sustainability and economic growth through this FTA?
Yeah, it's my respect. I think the e-commerce growth in Vietnam is so fast by now, as I mentioned in my presentation, and the fact that online cross-border transaction has been developed so fast to give some many challenges for policymakers to create friendly environment for foreign businesses together with protection customer to protect customer, I think. And as you can see, the blooming of online platform that appear around 5 years in Vietnam, such as Uber, craft and online services related to food delivery, etc. I agree with you that Vietnam, I agree with Madam Ambassador that the company should follow regulation and laws, especially in digital economy and digital firm and e-commerce firm. I will share with you some information about our plant right now. Ministry of Industry and Trade is working on revising the decree number 55 on e-commerce, and the updated point on this decree is will be considered to condition for foreign investor in e-commerce. Foreign businesses who conduct businesses with Vietnam customer to e-marketplace who plan to do e-commerce in Vietnam. And I hope this new point to in updated decree will answer your question on clearly for cross-border transaction about online business or online business on internet. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ren. Perhaps now we will just move on to Dr. Nikolai to perhaps share with us your perspectives on how businesses can best find the balance.
Well, as I was telling you, I think free trade is good, but now the objective of the EU Parliament or the member of the Parliament in Europe is to have a fair trade. But also, I would like to add the issue of geostrategic political issue. As you see, we have this trade war between the US and China. We have some uncertainty on Japan position as to the position of China. So we have many issues. So it's important that EU definitely put its hand in ASEAN. ASEAN, of course, ASEAN is not the EU. The way of management of the ASEAN rule is not the same way of the EU, but we have some similarity, some similarity, and this is why it's important for the EU to be definitely connected with the ASEAN. It's good that we started with Vietnam and Singapore, but on the long term, it's important that with the two bloc country we have some strong connection, not only economic connection, but also political connection. Understand that some political discussion with some EU member state, with Vietnam about the sea, the Vietnamese Sea or Chinese Sea. So it's a complicated discussion, but some EU country, they take some position on that issue. So it's not, again, it's not only a trade. I just would like to insist, you have a lot of non-trade issue in this document, in this FTA, and which put Vietnam at the highest level of standard. We had during the discussion of the parliament, we have some discussion on human rights in Vietnam, we have some discussion with the green energy, and Vietnam definitely is eager to join this, this discussion. So I'm very positive on the long term. Thank you, Shangari.
Thank you so much, Nikolai. We share the same optimism here at the EU-ABC and look forward to Vietnam's continuation towards sustainability efforts across the sectors, from labor to the environment and even through technology as well. If I may, I will return my time back to Dr. Tran as the MC for this morning's discussion. Thank you so much everyone that has joined in, and thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to ask the esteemed panelists such slightly difficult questions as well.
Yeah, thank you, Shangari. I also would like to wrap up this question with the idea that the EV-FTA is the first FTA that EU so far signed with a developing country, and the smooth implementation of the EV-FTA will also be a success for the EU values. So we look forward to see the smooth implementation of this agreement. And yeah, so it looks like we answer all the questions.
Yes.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, finally, we come to the end of our webinar. So we would like to say thanks again for all the presenters for their informative and interesting talk, and to the audience also for your active participations. Hopefully that the presentation will be beneficial for everybody, and we hope to see you again next time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.